Good afternoon, everyone. Rich Swerbinski with the Mortgage Collaborative here once again with the last week in Mortgage Today. We just started broadcasting live and we'll go ahead and get started momentarily. All right. Happy Tuesday, everyone. Rich Swerbinski with the Mortgage Collaborative here, as always, every Tuesday afternoon, 2 p.m. Eastern, with the last week in Mortgage Today, our weekly whirlwind through all the latest and greatest in the mortgage lending industry. Each week, pick one of our brighter lender members to sit in the co-pilot seat and back once again. Actually, was just on the rundown with Rob Krisman and I this past Friday. SVP National Production for Eustis Mortgage, Stephen Barton. Stephen, good to see you, brother.
You say brighter because you're saying I need a tan and I look shiny. What is that about?
It's that, you know, you're in Midwestern folk. We don't get a lot of sun in the winter. It's evidenced by the heat lamp I have in the background here. So
I mean, that is an inferno. I don't know how you're doing that.
All right, let's go ahead and get into it. As always, any questions, comments, thoughts, anything, feel free to drop it in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll go ahead and incorporate it into the show. Stephen, some breaking news that just came out. The two main national home price indices, CaseShiller, of course, and FHFA has gotten more into this over the course of the last year or so. Both came out with their final year-end December figures for home price appreciation in America. CaseShiller up 1.5% month over month, November to December, 18.8% full year 2021. FHFA up 1.2% nationally month over month and 17.6% year over year. So, you know, depending on some different factors, where you live and what you own, homes about 16 to 25% in America in 2021. Who would have thought? Who would have saw that one coming?
I didn't even hear about this. When did this start? No, it is. It's a different world, right? I think, you know, the funny thing is we all talk about in the mortgage industry all the different cycles and things that we've been through, and you like to say I've seen it all and I've lived through it all, and I don't know if we've quite seen this level of inventory shortage, escalation of prices. Certainly there's been times throughout where it's been pretty high, but consistently like this with no end in sight, really.
Yeah, I mean, the only part of this cycle that reminds me of 07, 06, 07, 08, we had that run up in values and lenders got overconfident in, you know, lack of default risk. And now we don't have that. I think just the underwriting standards in general, technology, general safeguards and regulation of the industry, totally different. But I think we're at a point now where people are starting to wonder, like, where the rubber is going to meet the road with home values and what comes next. If you look at the people that are paid to project this stuff, I mean, most are projecting values to continue to appreciate in 2022, albeit at a much, much, much milder pace. Where are you at just with how you think home values are going to play out in America over the course of the next year or two?
Good news is I'm not Kreskin, so I don't try to make my money off of predicting anything. But you know, you've got to be able to believe that there isn't an insight. And I think with the rising rate environment, obviously they're trying to curb inflation and some of this stuff. Purchasing power is now going to be decreased significantly. If you look at the rate hike over the last 45, 60 days, it's curbed anywhere from $50,000 to $75,000, in some cases maybe a little more, depending on your credit score and purchasing price. So now you still have rising home prices and you have the inability to kind of follow those up with low interest rates where people can borrow more. You did have a good point that in 2008, it was fog and mirror, get a loan, right? And there was definitely caution to the wind. I do feel like we're in a better position this year, that even if rates started to sink backwards, the people that have gotten mortgages in the last 24 months are in a better position to pay those mortgages. So the kind of the ability to curb that default that happened in 2008, I do feel like our lending practices have been more intentional this time around. But we have to figure out a solution to it, because at the end of the day, where the rates are at, you're losing 75% of your refinances. Everybody built their businesses the last 24 months on that, including their staffing. And so, and the ability as leaders to be able to take care of those people we promised and helped us through those 2 years of making all these windfalls of money. we need to figure out real-time, quick solutions to be able to help that problem.
Yeah, it really is a tale of two Americas as it relates to being able to buy a home in America. You look at the existing home sale data that also recently came out for January. If you remember, in December, existing home sales dropped by like 5% from November, far from what was anticipated and surprised most people, the drop that we saw in December. But then you look at January, it bounced right back and way higher than anybody was anticipating. So, what it shows is just there is such strong demand to buy houses in America. The supply and the inventory side, another tale. But the National Association of Realtors chief economist, Lawrence Yun, he actually went out of his way in his comments with this month's existing home sale data to say, quote, the inventory is woefully depleted and homes priced at 500,000 and below are disappearing while supply has risen at the higher price range. Yun went on to note that such increases will continue to shift the mix of buyers towards high income consumers. The increase in listing in the higher price tiers compared to a year ago, he said, should lead to less hurried decisions by some borrowers. But clearly more supply needed at the lower end of the market to achieve more equitable distribution of housing wealth, which is what this current presidential administration, I mean, they have talked about housing more than any presidency by far since the meltdown, all in this vein of trying to create an equal playing field. The numbers just keep widening and widening and widening. It just feels like something's going to happen here from a governmental policy standpoint. We've talked about this before, no easy answers, but it feels like something's going to happen here.
Well, the challenge you have, I mean, obviously everybody put down their eggnog after December and got back into the game in January, but creating the ability to serve those middle income markets, lower income markets is going to be where I think the government probably is going to have to step in, not from a standpoint of government control, because I don't think anybody, especially on this call, probably is welcoming any of that, but from an incentive-based, incentivizing private equity, some of these people to come in and invest in the lower market houses in terms of the price per square foot so that they can help people get that entry home. Because the entry homes now, they used to be 150 or 125,000 are now 275,000. And that's unattainable for someone who's making $15 an hour in a dual income house. And so we have to, be part of that solution to serve that market. Because at the end of the day, if we don't figure that Rubik's Cube out to get all the colors on the same side, we're actually going to end up hurting ourselves, because the number of buyers and the number of houses on this top end are going to be limited if we can't solve that, because there's more consumers down here in this bracket that we can serve if we can figure out that. And that means lenders coming up with creative ways to be part of the building process, also working with, their state and local bond agencies and grant programs to help those people be able to get second liens and forward closing costs and things like that. And, we got to be part of the solution. As much as people maybe don't like those types of loans because of the secondary position on gains that you're able to do, it's a way that we're going to have to build a compensation model for loan officers that works, and also a way to offer those products on a wider range to be able to serve ththose customers.
We have just a quick aside on the bond loans, because you hear all our members complain about that. Like, there's so much work and you can make zero money on them. I recently heard one of our members, I think it was I forget which state it was, but they banded together a group, I think it was through their local state MBA, a group of lenders, and renegotiated their bond price takeout for a successful outcome, which I thought was a really cool. It's like one of those things that you hear it, oh, that makes sense, because everybody complains about that, but and it goes to serve borrowers that need help. But just an interesting aside that I heard a few months ago.
Well, and I think we've got to think outside the box on this stuff. And, we're on this call, and kind of the motto has always been the power of the network, right? And that's kind of what we need to be leveraging, the power of all of us together. There's a lot of smart people on this call, not the hosts included. But obviously we can do things like that to shift the curve a little bit, because if the government truly is about what they said they were about during the election time, and especially coming into 2022's elections, then you would think they would be more apt to listen to the people that have their asses on the line, lending this money and being the resource locally to try to execute, what seems to be right now a little bit of a flawed strategy, but that can be quickly, I think, fixed to be able to serve that community.
Well put. Moving on to new home sales, which mostly represented by newly built homes, just continues to plot along. I think there were 66,000 new home sales in America in January, up slightly from December's 60,000 total, but down 12.5% year over year from January of 2021. Obviously, the big factor here just being not a lot of new homes being built for a bunch of different reasons: labor, land, supply shortages, just, tough for builders to build anything other than more than $500,000 homes and make money. And, I remember sitting here 9-10 months ago when we were talking about home values and just saying, like, I can't see anything that is going to make home values stop going up, because there's nothing coming on the supply side. I don't think government can figure this out. And even if they try to, it's tricky. And I kind of feel the same way now as we get into towards the spring buying season of another year. There's just no supply coming. It doesn't mean it's not going to be a good year for home purchases, because demand is so strong. But I guess I'm talking more as it relates to just home values. And I don't see the pace, right? Like right now we're 1.5 to 1.8% month over month, annualized 15, 16%, whatever that is. I feel like that's where we might be. Any thoughts on just the new home build kind of conundrum in America, and the fact that we're just not putting enough new stock on the shelves each month?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest thing you hit on, right, is when you had the supply chain issues that obviously allowed everybody to move the needle in terms of what things cost, right? If you look, like they came out today and Sherwin-Williams and Benjamin Moore said paint prices have already risen month over month 26%. So just even little things like paint are going through the roof. Now, the good news is lumber's retreated backwards a little bit, but what you found, or I've found at least, is when you have these price resets because of a supply shortage, they don't tend to reverse back, right? Unless there's a complete bottoming out and they have to. So the cost to build a house, I don't think is going to appreciably decline, even if supply chain issues get alleviated. So the biggest thing is then looking for the home builders that are the most adaptable. It's almost like the Southwest model, where they really hit the home run as they bought so much futures and gas that they were able to outkick the big airlines when they got hit with the fees. You're almost looking for that home builder that has kind of that vision to be able to do that, or someone to be able to help out with that, because it's not going to get any cheaper to build a house. Land's not going to get any cheaper, and they're running out of it on a daily basis, right? So I think for us, we just have to hope a little bit that we can get some of that infusion from incentives from the government to get some of these people off the sidelines, because if you look at how much money's on the sideline right now that people are holding out because of fear, if we could get that into the market and into land and into home building and low to moderate income houses, I think we got a shot to keep this thing going for a little bit longer.
Love it. This is the last week in Mortgage Today. I'm Rich Swerbinsky with the Mortgage Collaborative, this week joined by Eustace Mortgage SVP National Production, Stephen Barton. And Stephen, I think another thing, as inflation just continues to be more persistent of a problem that is going to help the housing market and help home purchases and help our industry this year, is what I've started to hear from a couple of friends of mine and just more broadly online, is people looking at housing as a hedge against inflation. Like, okay, hey, the cost of everything I'm buying is going up by 7-8% each month, but if I own a home or if I buy a home, that's going up by more than that each month. Yes. So, I mean, a good point that I really hadn't thought of. And, especially with most people thinking values are going to continue to rise.
Well, it's almost a little bit like you're investing in the stock market. I mean, there's always going to be a little bit of a retreat, or in some cases, sometimes a crash, but every time it comes back stronger. So even if you're buying a house at these home prices and for some reason the the valuation of these houses doesn't continue to rise and maybe even stays stagnant or declines, long term, it's still the investment you can make. Not only from the standpoint of even if you had normal 3% appreciation year over year, right? But the tax benefit as well of having the house and the mortgage deductions and things like that still outweigh not doing it right now. So I do think that's a good point. Something to watch over the next 24 months. But if I did not have a home, I'd be buying a home right now.
Yeah, I chronicled it on this show. I bought a house in like April and was terrified that I was like buying right at the top, but like up like 18% in the last 8 months. So it's like, you know,
and that's just in the West Wing you're sitting in right now.
people are, I think, looking at it the same way though. Because, you know, back in the spring of last year, there was this, you know, especially from younger people, mostly like, oh, this is out of hand. I can't wait till this bubble bursts. I'm going to swoop in there and buy something that, you know, way less than it's going for now. Well, no bubble burst. It's time to, you want a house, like pony up, right?
Well, yeah, you cost yourself 18 grand by those numbers on every 100,000, right?
Yep. Federal Reserve starting to talk more openly about a 0.5-point rate increase at their March meeting. Fed Governor Michelle Bowman mentioned it at the American, Bankers Conference earlier this week, and that echoes some statements some of the other Fed governors have made, suggesting 50, or in the case of one of them, 100 basis point hike. A lot of this already priced in already. And, you know, you talk about every time you think where things are going with the mortgage industry, like, oh, rates are 4%, inflation's high, like saddle up for what it's going to be a year of rates in the fours. Like, you know, this geopolitical tension, you get a couple good economic numbers, you get an inflation number that maybe is less than people anticipate. And we could be back in the 3.2, 3.3 range in the 30-year fixed rate very quick. And we've seen this happen a million times before in this industry.
Yeah, it's called the yo-yo, right? They tend to, and it almost, they do this, I think, to us intentionally just to mess with our nerves a little bit. But I don't know how they can raise the rates. I know they've got to stall at inflation, so I mean, I guess that's how I know. But if you keep raising interest rates any higher than we're at today, you almost are going to stall everything out. And you know, as much as I've learned anything in my 20-something years is, you know, if the housing market's not going right, if mortgages aren't going, the rest of the economy is usually really in the tank. So I can't see them. You know, you need to do something. I totally agree with that. But going to any levels past what they've done, I think is a little bit of a dangerous slippery slope. But, you know, at the end of the day, if they want to take us back into the 3.25s and create another refi boom for this year, you know, that's not too bad. Jack Thompson might be looking to retire out there in New Mexico.
I can't tell you how many times I've said, oh, this is it. There's not gonna be another refi boom for at least another 3-4 years, and
right.
Including this past year. It'll be maybe the greatest year in the history of mortgage lending, when everybody thought it would slow down after that crazy 2020. But just when you think you've seen it all. What else in the news this week? We talked about home builder confidence index dropped again for a second straight month. Freddie Mac rolled out direct deposit income verification. You see or read anything about that?
Yeah, so we've been on the front end of this part as well. I mean, obviously, you know, we try to tend to be on the side of the humans and the robots, trying to balance those equally. So we're excited that this is finally going completely live instead of just on the beta testing that it's been in. And I think it'll be a big windfall. Now, I mean, it's still going to be far from perfect, but, you know, you have to start somewhere. And the more of these things we can roll out to make it easier on the manufacturing process is what we need to do, because that's one way that we can stave off some of the little bit higher rates for our consumers, is to build a better way to close a loan and less expensive so that we can reduce our costs. And so stuff like this, continuing to advance the ability for technology, for OCR, for RPAs and automation, I think it's a great thing. So we're totally on board with it.
Awesome. And note in the chat from our friend Jody Hall, Nationwide Mortgage Bankers, talking about down payment assistance programs, saying Essex, who is a TMC member, ESSEX out of California, has a DPA program that is not tied to states the advantage is you only need to know guidelines for one program. I had not heard of that. They are not in New York, which ironically is the state Jody's company is based out of. They do, but using for other states. So Jody, thanks for the note. I did not know that, and that is good intel. Thank you for sharing. Stephen, what else as we get into the heart of 2022? You guys are coming off a good year, pretty much just, I mean, pandemic business aside, continued to grow your business and made some key additions and acquisitions. What are you looking at out in the landscape, maybe that some other people aren't, as we trudge towards the spring here?
I mean, the biggest thing, you know, and you and I are kind of talking about this, is it's how do you not get trapped with all of this information you're going over? And, you know, it almost feels a little doom and gloomish a bit, you know, but how do you not get trapped looking at your feet, right? Because that's what's going to happen to a lot of lenders, is they're going to pause and they're going to freeze. It's almost a redo of 2021, whatever, when the pandemic started, where they started to pull FHA low programs and bond programs. And you saw companies freezing across the United States saying, oh my God, we're going to 680 and we're not going to do refinances for 60 days. And those lenders actually lost business, you know, whatever state they were in. They actually hurt themselves because they panicked a little bit. And I think the key thing for us is, you know, we understand what's in front of us right now in 2022, but we're trying to keep our eyes out of 2025 and on the horizon. So knowing that our fundamentals are still the same, knowing that our technology, our guardrails, our compliance are sound, right? It allows us to continue to take these shots down the field, and which we've continued to do this past year. You saw at the end of the year with a great coming together between two companies. We have a couple other big announcements hopefully coming in the next 60 days on some other people we're adding. And we're going to continue to take those opportunities to strengthen our company for our customers and for our people, because, you know, that's what our promise is. Every day we've got to wake up, re-earn everybody's loyalty, but we have to take care of them and stay focused on where their kids want to go to college. And that's our main priority as leaders, is, you know, not how much money we can make for the company, but how we can make sure every person is taken care of and they feel safe and they want to come in and dominate for our clients.
That's awesome. And yeah, congrats again on the acquisition and additions you guys have made, and been great to see the success there under you and Kate's leadership. But it is really like the mortgage industry it's a gambling industry. It really is, because the nature of it, it's just so incredibly cyclical. And then you have like a climate like now, right? Everybody's overstaffed. I was at the IMB conference a few weeks ago and just kind of like polling all the different lenders I met with, and anywhere from like 15% to like 60% overstaffed operationally. But everybody thinks they're going to grow. I've been on the opposite end, the back end of these cycles, where people didn't grow, and they talk about the pain of carrying, you know, employee loads. But you're out there, you're talking to people, you're trying to recruit, you're trying to make acquisitions, maybe. So you're kind of betting on yourself. You get rid of people, it's harder to bring them back in. And so it is really a gambler's industry. It's forgetting like just the hedging your risk. We had a lot of members didn't hedge loans last year at all, or as much as they normally did, just figuring the Fed was so in there on bond buying, like the risk of rates shooting up and, you know, losing some money on the pipeline far outweighed by not having all the hedge costs throughout the year.
Yeah.
So
I mean, there's a lot of that. And, you know, we do take shots down the field, but, you know, we talk about, you know, calculated shots now. Before, where you know, in 2021, you know, or even in 2020, you could gunsling a little bit. And, you know, like I said, money cures a lot of problems and covers up a lot of challenges. And as I told the team yesterday on a call, I said, those days are gone. Now, every decision you make is under a spotlight and will be shined on quicker than it's ever been shined on before. So it doesn't mean I want everybody to be reserved and not take shots down the field and not fail. We have to fail. Fail's a good thing. But you need to do a little bit more math. It's more of the measure twice, cut once approach in 2022 to those opportunities and the decisions you make as your business. But really, now is a really good time for companies. Don't bet on growth, because growth is a mirage this year. Growth the last 2 years was all it was. It was just not even water. It was champagne falling down on everybody. This year, if you're betting on growth, you're going to get sand. And so what you need to prepare for is building up the water tanks as fast as you can, still growing internally and externally, but that growth isn't going to be over where you're at. It's going to be to maintain where you're at. And then you're just loading up the gun for 4 years from now when everything comes back around into the next cycle and your foundation's set and you're ready to go.
I think it was you that was saying last week, and I hadn't thought about it this way, but we've had all this volume, 2 record years in a row, but like you said, it's like, should be comparing yourself against 2 years ago, like January 2020, right? That was a normal January. This past January, historically, a normal January for the mortgage industry feels not like that because you're coming off, 18, 20 months of just rampant, very profitable production. But, got to look back a little bit further in the rear view to get maybe a more clear lens.
Well, the funny thing is, I know January 2022 is the same as January 2020 because we lost money on both of those months.
So, I mean, my friend Stephen Milner on the DMC board. Like, one of his famous sayings of many is like, you lose money Jan, Feb, March, and then you go make it all back in April through December.
That's your hope, right? And so we did a very probably a smarter thing, and we didn't realize it at the time, but we retained more earnings in 2020 and 2021 than we even projected into the company. So if you look at our balance sheet, we're in a really good place. And it's almost like how we bet on technology 5 years ago, and then the pandemic hit, and 90% of our workforce was already working from home and everybody else was trying to figure it out. I'm hoping that similar decision doesn't bite us, because we could have probably done a little bit something with that to go kind of spruce up the engine in the car. But I'm hoping that puts us in a good position to weather this first quarter, which, it looks like if we can break some of these things loose in April with inventory, which I think will start to happen, get some of the lower priced homes going and back into the market, then I think this summer and the rest of the year, frankly, has a chance to be really, really great still.
I think so too. There's so much housing demand out there. There really is. And, the fixes to the supply side are not easy, but I think they're going to come more into the forefront. We get into the spring, places like where I live in Cleveland, and like, I haven't seen my neighbors in 2 months, things start to open up a little bit. But you made a good point. One of the things that I remember talking with somebody about a couple months ago was like, we were talking about the year that was coming up, 2022. And it was like talking about keys, and I forget who it was, but they mentioned like, how do lenders spend the profits of 2021? Do you reserve some of it so you can keep the pricing pencil sharp when times are tight? Do you just go out and buy LOs and fancy shiny tools? I've seen all the strategies and, some history on which ones have been more successful than others. But I thought it was a great point, because everybody made a lot of money the last 2 years. Is the owner putting it in his pocket? Is the owner putting it back into the company? Are they? It bears watching.
It was tough for our shareholders because they wanted us to distribute as much as we possibly could. And so for us to say, hey guys, look, the first quarter of next year is going to be vastly different. We're going to hold back X amount. And they're like, well, why are we not distributing? And it said, you're just going to have to trust us. We've been successful at this point. And our leadership team's fairly young. I mean, we don't have anybody on our leadership team over the age of 50, which is rare in the mortgage industry. And a lot of us took leadership positions at a very easy time, right? Where it's like, oh, great, I'm a great leader because we're making a lot of money. And now you're starting to see kind of the restraint that we're showing, I think is a good thing. I would not spend money on buying LOs. That is usually a losing proposition long-term. As I said on the last call, I would instead pay higher basis points in the interim, to where maybe it's the same amount of money you're paying out, but it's only there when you have the revenue realized to pay it out instead of just going for it, right? The other thing I'd encourage lenders to do right now, especially, is to be really honest and transparent. One of the things we do is we actually share with our entire staff the company's challenges, whether it be, hey, we're not profitable this month, or hey, these are the concessions. And we talk to everybody about what that means to everybody in the company. We talk to the branch managers of how, lowering the concessions allows us to maintain our entire staff, which is a priority for us. And so when you do that, you kind of get rid of the fear a little bit, because the fear right now for operational staff in the mortgage industry is, oh shit, I'm about to get laid off, right? And that's not a good place for anybody to live. much less a receptionist that's trying to take care of her kids. So talking about these things, easing those tensions, that doesn't mean you're not going to have to do hard things, because that is in front of us most likely. But to be able to have the transparency to communicate that and be human, I think is probably a really big priority for, or should be a big priority for most companies. We do it, and we're not perfect either. And there's some things you can't share, but man, it's going to be a fun year if we can weather the next, 60 days. But we got to get through those next 60 days.
Very well put. Stephen, always enjoy the conversation, picking your brain on the industry. And thanks for the double duty these last few days. Always enjoy, brother.
I'm here to serve, Rich. Power of the network.
And to our attendees, as always, thank you so much for spending 30 minutes with us. We're here every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern with the Last Week in Mortgage Today. You can also catch us on YouTube, on our YouTube page, or on podcast. Subscribe to TMC Connect on Spotify or Apple. Until next week, have a great rest of the week, everyone. Thanks again, Stephen.
See you guys.
Take care, bud.